Hi, everyone. Good morning still, if you're in Montreal. Good morning. I'm doing this like spontaneous showing up live. I haven't done a live in so long, but I had this moment of inspiration. So I thought, okay, let's hop on, let's do this. I was actually inspired by a entrepreneur coach named Simone Grace Soul, and she is just a powerhouse. So if you're an entrepreneur and you want inspiration, this woman will just blow your mind. I can put actually her, here we go. Do I have it? Yeah, her website here in the comments. Oh, I can't put it in the comments. How bizarre. All right, I'll put it later in the comments. And yeah, so that you can check her out. But so the reason I am on this live today is because of her. She inspired me. She was talking about shameless actions that she's done. And it just like, I was like, what a perfect time to read this, especially that Elodie and I are offering Burning Women Shameless Retreat coming up in a few weeks from now, which I'll talk about later. But this really prompted me to ask myself, like, what are these shameless actions that I have done? And then I went further and started asking myself, like, how did I dismantle the shame? So, meaning, like, how was I able to get into action that had me put away the shame? So today's intention behind this live, I want to share with you because it's really important for me to stay connected to that intention, is that my offering today is for you to unleash yourself by dismantling shame. So to look at your life and see where you can dismantle it so you can be in action. All right, let's begin. So the first, I thought of three. I thought of three actions that I've done recently that I would consider shameless. And one of them was to go back on my word. Whew, this one is so difficult. Like for me, it's one of my core values to stay true to my word and to follow through on what I say I'm going to do. It's like one of my core values. But I was confronted with this value when I had given my word to do an event, to host Inner Fire Movement event, and that I was faced with first like my intuition kicking in and being like, something doesn't feel right, because I had given my word like several months before this event was taking place. And so yeah, I was all of a sudden feeling like something doesn't feel right, but I kept putting that away by saying, no, Mel, you gave your word, you do what you say you're going to do, and that is really important. So I was being really firm and almost like parental with myself. Like, your intuition doesn't matter right now. Like, what matters is what you say you're going to do it. So I wasn't realizing this. It wasn't conscious, but I kept putting it aside. And then like getting closer to the actual event, I started feeling really not well. And it was the first time ever that I felt uninspired. I would like start to create the event, my offering, and I was like blank. And I said to myself, that's a really big sign. Long story short, there were things that started to appear closer to the event. They were really out of integrity for me in terms of the organization. And at some point, I realized that I had to listen to my intuition. Like, there were too many alarm bells. So I went ahead and I took all my courage and all my authenticity, and I shared with the person that I was no longer willing to attend the event and to offer Inner Fire Movement. it was really, it shook me up a lot. It took me like, I didn't sleep. Like, anyways, there was a lot going on because I was confronted with this place of shame. Like, I was shaming myself, and I was afraid of being shamed, of being completely misunderstood and taken for a flake, like somebody who just bails, last minute. So the way I went about dismantling the shame is I took a moment with myself after like I took my courage and shared it, and asked myself, like, do I trust what I feel? And is it okay that even though not everybody understands and everybody knows why I did it, and that I might be judged and even maybe rejected for it, like, would it be okay that I know that I did the right thing for me and for my community? Because I knew that if I showed up uninspired, angry, feeling unsafe because there were things out of integrity, like all this, I would not be in service. And so that was one shameless action, that the first one that I wanted to share with you. So that's how I dismantled it, by trusting myself. Okay, number 2, being firm with a client. There's a lot, like, business, as an entrepreneur, a lot of things that I'm like having to take my courage to do. But the last one after, it's more a personal thing, and I'll explain it to you after. So being firm with a client, this one was really challenging. I'm not going to go into details about what happened, but just so that you understand a little bit of what I was confronted by, was that I was confronted with my event policy by a client. And this one is, again, like, really a difficult place for me to put my boundary as an entrepreneur, is when I'm confronted by someone who is trying to get what they want from me by, what's the word? Pulling on the strings of, you're not being generous enough. And so after, like, some conversation where I felt very authentic, very welcoming, and also clear about what my policy is, this person followed by, like, shaming me and attacking me. And usually my usual response would be to go into the shame and be like, oh my God, I'm terrible. Like, I wasn't, considerate enough and generous enough and all this stuff. And especially falling into, like, that new age way of doing business, where it's a reaction, from my perspective, is a reaction to the patriarchal structure of business. But to me, goes, like, way too much to the other side, where I don't feel like I'm respecting myself if I'm just like, oh yeah, like, you can't, you didn't read my policy, no problem, I'll refund you. You didn't, like, this for me doesn't sit well. So once again, I had to do the shameless act of standing up for myself, and also being extremely vulnerable with this client, and saying that I felt attacked, that I felt shamed, and also being really transparent and firm about how I felt that they had dealt with the situation. And so the way that I dismantled the shame is that I comforted myself in knowing that I have boundaries for my business. Not only do I have boundaries for my own personal care, my physical boundaries, emotional boundaries, my business has boundaries, so that it could be, in integrity, so that it can thrive, so that it can be even more in service and even more generous. Those boundaries are in place not to be rigid and cruel and consider clients as just numbers. that's not it. So that's another way that I did a shameless act or dismantled the shame around it. And lastly, standing up to authority. Whew, that one makes me shake in my boots. So I was in a workshop, and this one's a little more complex to explain. So I'll do my best to bring you there so you understand. But I was in a workshop where someone else was being facilitated. We were, around 30 people, I believe, or like 25 in the room, and there was a lot going on, and there was a process happening, and this process affected me so deeply, and I felt this energy in me needing to be expressed. Like it was beyond, it felt beyond Mel. Like it felt like it was just like it needed to come through me in response to this process. It wasn't against this process. It wasn't in reaction, but it was actually quite in line, and because I was affected. And I took all my courage and I named it to the person who is facilitating. And this person was like, not right now. And it was like, I felt like a volcano where all of a sudden, like somebody's being like, don't explode, don't. And I was just, I can't, it's bigger than me. And so I took all my courage in that moment and all my leadership. And I said, this is happening. This is coming out. And I grabbed some people and I said, would you support me? And we went out of the room and I moved the energy. This might sound really abstract for some of you who have never done core energetics, but just know, like if you can relate in a way where there was a moment in time where you felt so called to say something, to stand up, to like just this force of nature coming through you. Remember that moment. Like that's what it felt like for me. And so I asked for help. And I allowed this energy to move. I processed. They were affected. Everybody just felt so touched. And of course, I mean, some people, from the group were affected, not in a good way. They were angry that, we separated. There was all sorts of things that happened. But for my shameless action, at one moment I had to stop. And like, in order to dismantle the shame of what I'd done, I had to be okay that when I walked back in that room, that the authority would possibly like put me out, like say, like it was a retreat, and they could have easily been like, no, that's, you disrespected me, like out, So for me, the dismantling of the shame was asking for help. And I was so supported. I walked back into that room with like 5 people, I think we were, so 6 in total. And I felt so protected and so cared for. I was like, if I get rejected and kicked out, then so be it. Here we go. So yeah, and that didn't happen, that didn't happen one bit. We had a beautiful conversation, and I mean, the leader is the most extraordinary leader I've ever met, where he welcomed me back being like, damn, like that was powerful, and he had feelings about it. It wasn't all like, whoa, but honoring the fact that I trusted myself and I went into my leadership and I trusted myself. So the 3, how could I say, the 3 keys that I used in these different scenarios of dismantling was trusting myself, comforting myself, and asking for help. These are like broad strokes. But I want to share with you what I'm noticing that is common in all of these 3 examples of shameless actions. And what is common is that first, my intuition kicks in. So acknowledging my intuition. And then fear kicks in. It's more like terror. I sincerely start to shake. I start to shake and I always feel like I'm about to get annihilated. And I'm not kidding when I say that. This is not exaggeration. I'm like, in my cells, I feel like I might get burnt alive, stoned, abused, or shunned, which means to be like rejected completely by society. And then I call upon my courage because I cannot tolerate shutting down, shutting up, staying small no longer. And then I go into my authenticity. I say what is my truth. I say it with as much vulnerability as I can tolerate. And so I'm really realizing that being shameless, for me, the pathway is this. Intuition, like letting that come in and being like, okay, all right, something inside of me is speaking really loudly, and then going and being like, acknowledging my terror, and then calling upon my courage anyway, and following through with authenticity. And I could add vulnerability in there as well. And this is probably one of the most powerful pathways to self-love, or like a self-love act. I hope that this live was useful. I really feel like more and more, if we can find ways to show up shameless, we will transform our lives, our individual lives. And then by leading by example, transform lives that we touch and intimately. And then it just keeps spreading. Community, you know. So if you would like to explore ways of being shameless, get clear on when you do feel shame or when you're being shamed, cultivating awareness around that. And if you'd like to be among women who want the same, and if you want to be also in the power of play and in your own leadership, then join 𝒖𝒏𝒍𝒆 and I. We are offering a retreat coupled with a journey. I'll explain that in a second. The retreat is taking place the 7th, 8th, and 9th of October. So it's coming pretty fast. I will put a link in the comments once this is over, because for some reason I can't seem to put it right now, but I'll put it in the comments and it will lead you to the landing page where the retreat, all the details are explained, what's included, and the tools that we'll be using, etc. And also the journey. So the journey is a 2-month program. So it's extended over 2 months. It's bi-weekly, where we have 3 Tuesdays. So every 2 weeks we meet for a Tuesday, and then we end with 2 Saturdays, full days. And at each session is themed, where we will do more intimate exploration with the body. We will have a whole Tuesday dedicated to money and wealth. So exciting. I can't wait. We will have also like moments of connection and tenderness and care amongst women. We'll have the opening circle, the closing circle. Also, we have a day where we're dismantling like all these judgments and conflicts between women, you know, what we, and if there are some even more like within the group, like really taking time to look at these with awareness and compassion and in a really safe container. So if you're interested, please check out the landing page and fill out the Google form. We'd love to connect with you and to include you on this incredible journey. I mean, the whole thing is a journey, really. We're creating a safe and powerful container amongst women at the retreat, and then we keep going. So, you know, sometimes you go to a retreat and you create these beautiful connections within women, and, or, you know, you might go to a retreat with people who identify, you know, other than women. But you go to retreat, you have these powerful moments, these deep connections, and then poof, like, and also you've learned something about yourself and you'd like to practice it or know more about it, and you're left to your own devices. So this is an opportunity to learn about yourself and then like keep going, keep discovering, keep deepening those les liens, those connections, and deepening your self-awareness. Because the more that we become self-aware, the more that we have choices. So thank you so much for taking the time to listen to me today. I hope you're having a wonderful day and have a great weekend if you're listening to this on Friday, September 16th. And if you have any questions about burning women, please don't be shy to message me or Elodie. We would love to answer your questions. All right, take care and keep living shamelessly. Ciao.